Hi, my name is Karolina. I am from the Wonderland Foundation, and today I will be convincing you, or at least trying to convince you, why Killing Immersion may be good for the story or for your LARP. I tried to give this talk once already at the COLA conference some 6 or 7 years ago, and it met with mixed reactions at first, but by the end of it, a couple of people were actually convinced that, hey, there is a point to it. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts at the end, and hopefully we will have a discussion as well. First, let me start by saying that this actually didn't come easy to me, this topic, because I started as a very immersive player. When I started LARPing, immersion was my absolute goal. I was led to believe that to be a good LARPer, it means to be an immersive LARPer. It means to experience bleed, meaning for the emotions of the character to seep into me as a real person and to linger with me after the game. And the more bleed I experienced, the more immersed I was. And that was my holy grail of LARPs, and I strived very, very hard to achieve that. And I actually managed to do that many, many times, especially on the international Nordic scene, which is very conducive, yes, bleedy, very conducive to immersion and to bleed, especially the so-called Type 2 LARPs, which are more driven by heavy emotions and sadness and feelings that can easily bleed to the player. And then I started organizing LARPs. And I saw that immersion is actually detrimental to, well, full immersion at least, to the experience. And today I will try to explain to you why, what happened, and why I think now, after many, many years of experience as an organizer and a player alike, that actually killing a little bit of immersion in myself during the LARPs has made me a better LARPer, and encouraging other players to do the same has made me a better organizer. Whether this is objectively true, I don't know, but I like to believe that it is. So I will share my experience with you today. Okay, so I will give you a short definition of immersion as I found it in the Oxford Dictionary. So it's a deep mental involvement in something, apparently. I don't know if all of you are familiar with LARPs which strive for creating this immersion with scenography, with very atmospheric materials leading to the game, and with the gameplay itself. Sometimes it starts as early as workshops, which are very conducive to immersion, which are very slowly leading people into play, which I actually love. These are my absolute favorite types of workshops, as well as those that explain the whole premise of the game on a completely off-game manner, but by doing that, allow easier immersion later on. So still, let's be on the same page. Immersion is still the goal. I'm just trying to argue that fully immersing yourself in the story is not good. So let's have a look at some points that I have to make. So why do we strive for immersion? So like I mentioned before, my goal at least was always to feel closer to myself as a person and to my emotions by triggering emotions in the character and then letting myself experience them. And I think that a lot of people are trying to do the same, to feel things very deeply and for these feelings to stay with them for a while. It also means getting more involved with the story itself and feeling like the story resonates with us, which is good, it's great, and I wholeheartedly recommend this. This picture is from the LARP Black Friday, ran in 2016 by Teresa Pesate, an Italian group, which was a highly immersive LARP, and it was the first game that I've seen, and I think the only one so far that went so hard on creating an immersive experience. So what they did was they drove us as in players, to the Alps, where there was this abandoned village that they refurbished into a mining village, and then a separate location, which was a big CDC tent with FBI headquarters and a separate building for the army. And they divided the player base into the miners who lived in the village, and the second part of the group was basically law enforcement and the government employees. And everything that was happening 24/7 was in-game, and everything you saw could be interacted with in-game, meaning you could drive every car that you saw, you could cook in every oven that you saw, you could basically interact with every single item that you saw. Nothing was off-game. There was no off-game area at this game. There was no organizer to go to off-game unless, well, there was, but you had to leave the play area, which meant a very long walk outside. Was it a very safe game for today's standards? Hell no. We had an actual explosion there when a not very safe gas oven basically exploded in a very cinematic and very unsafe way. And one player tackled the other out of the way, which was also very cinematic and also very unsafe, but it was very immersive. I had a bleed for months after this game, because first of all, the story was just so heart-wrenching and so dark, and the environment and the scenography and everything that you could interact with was so very well, immersive. But then when I look at this game from the perspective of me all those years back, I realized that I was playing very selfishly. I was so immersed in my character and so focused on my own feelings as a character/player that I wasn't really thinking about the other players and what they were doing. And I was making mistakes, me as a player. At some point in the game, I was given a lot of authority. My character, who was an FBI agent, was elevated to the position of the leader, and I tried to do everything alone because my character didn't trust other characters. There was a lot of conspiracy going on. As a player, I should have played others up. I should have let the hacker play the hacking. The other subordinates play their own roles, bring the information to me. What I did instead was I was so into this whole, oh my gosh, I'm the boss now, I need to take care of all these people, I got this, I know I can trust myself and myself alone, that I was taking play away from other people. Because that's what my character would do. And this whole thing, that's what my character would do, and this immersion on this extreme level was detrimental to other people's play. This wasn't the only time when I made this mistake. It wasn't the only time when I look back at my play and I see that I was immersed so immensely that I wasn't being a very good co-player to others. I had an amazing experience, meaning I felt things. But when I look back, I wasn't a very collaborative person, and LARP is a collaborative experience. So what are the downsides of immersion? From the player's perspective, it can lead to frustration. Now, it can lead to frustration for you as an immersed player, or a player who is striving for immersion. So let's say that this is your goal. You want to be really immersed in the story, and you can't. You're just bouncing off of some things that drive you out of the immersion. Maybe you can see somebody using a cell phone, or maybe it's just, it doesn't click in your head. And since this is your goal, and everybody's telling you, you should definitely immerse yourself in the story, look at this amazing scenography, and look at what the organizers have prepared, how can you not be immersed? You're feeling really angry with yourself and just like done with everything. Or at least that was my feeling many, many times. Then you also feel disconnected. When other people are so into the story and they're running around and doing all those things, and you feel kind of separated, because you can still think as yourself and you're not in the character fully. You feel like you're not playing the same game as they are. Like, what am I doing wrong? And this feeling of doing something wrong is very detrimental to our feelings as LARPers, I think. It's also something that a lot of my players have struggled with at the start when I started organizing LARPs, because I was feeling that immersion is my goal. I need to get them immersed and I'll be damned if I don't. And so that's what they were trying to do. And I didn't give them enough tools, or maybe there was some other problem. And I felt like I failed them, and they felt like they failed me. And the helplessness and the lack of agency are also the results of the striving for a full immersion. So when the player tries to feel the way they should feel, instead of just embracing the game and just rolling with it and sometimes stepping out to see, hey, what is a cool thing that I can do right now? Sure, maybe they will at some point achieve this full immersion, but will they have fun playing the game? I don't think so. Or at least that wasn't my experience so far. So from the organizer perspective, when this first happened to me as an organizer, when I saw my players being disconnected and not fully immersed and just like trying to get into the story instead of actually playing, instead of using it as a game, I felt like I was watching a collection of singular experiences. Okay, this person is super immersed, they're sitting in a corner and crying over something, amazing. This person is laughing at some joke that the other person has told them, they are having a moment, fantastic. Those two are making out, okay, great, fully immersed. And then there's this group of players who are kind of like, okay, I'm not gonna approach these guys because they're making out. These have some sort of an inside joke going on, probably not. That person is crying, I should probably not interrupt their, type 2 moment. What am I supposed to be doing? And when I saw all these disjointed stories without them interconnecting and without people playing each other up and like throwing the ball to one another and throwing it back because they were thinking on the meta level, something clicked in my head and I thought, have I gone too far trying to get people immersed that they forgot how to play the game and just how to play, how to be generous and how to think a bit outside of their character at some points. And that's what also made me think about my own experience as a player. So let's talk a little bit about the narrative. So a narrative is a spoken or written account of connected events. It's basically a story. A story is something that we as LARPers try to co-create. It's not something that the organizers make. It's not something that every single player makes. And something that absolutely boils my blood is this belief that was very prevalent at some point in the LARP world, that every person has their own story and everyone is a hero of the story. I don't think so. I think that it's a collaborative experience. And I know that it's a very, it's a point of a lot of arguing in many, many circles. But I've been burnt many, many times as a player and as an organizer, thinking that this story is mine. I'm the hero here, not like the main character, but that I need to like step up and either take charge or have a goal that is very, very important off game to get immersed, to the point where I forgot that it's also about these people. That person crying in the corner, and these two having a joke, and even these two making out. That I can do something to draw them into the story, or maybe see if there is a way for them to draw me in. And from then on, I was starting to think about LARP as something broader, as something that can connect all those little stories into one full narrative. And I decided that what needs to happen on my end, as a player, is to kill a little bit of immersion in myself. which I gladly did. So the narrative approach can be, on the player side, achieved by intentionally breaking immersion for the benefit of other players, for their own experience, for the overarching storyline, or all of the above. This is what I'm talking about when I say stepping outside a little bit. This means taking the other person aside, doing the look down and calibrating with them. Going, hey, do you think that it's a good idea for us to have an argument? Or just communicating to them, so I've been really bored and our relationship hasn't moved anywhere. Do you think that we could do something about it? I am no longer afraid to step outside, to go off game a little bit, to break the immersion of myself or another player, if this is supposed to benefit their story, my story, or the overarching story. And I will always encourage my players to do the same, to communicate, whether they do it in-game or off-game, because this is about building an experience together. This is about collaboration, and sometimes you have to do this off-game. And we have meta techniques for that. So for the organizers, they can employ some railroad techniques. I don't like this word at all, but this is what LARPers BFF told me when I asked them about this question. Or implementing some hard-coded elements into the story in order to steer the narrative in a specific direction. So as a player, how do I contribute to this narrative approach? Play to lift. Play to lift is one of my absolute favorite things to ever happen to LARP, and something that took me a while to learn, because they don't teach it at LARP University. You have to experience it first, so somebody needs to do this to you, I think, before you realize what it is about. At one LARP, I had a situation where I was playing a troublemaker. It was a character that was very difficult for me as a very introverted person to get into, and a very difficult character for me to shine in any situation. So I was just standing somewhere in the background and basically not giving the others the play that they expected from me. Until something clicked in my co-players and they noticed that I was withdrawn, and they started playing me up. So whenever I did some little troublemakery thing, they would blow it out of proportion. They would encourage me. They would create situations for me to go and prank someone, or brawl with someone, or smack somebody over the head. And I noticed what they were doing, even though I didn't have words for it back then. It was a long time ago and I didn't know that play to lift existed. But somebody showed me that they would create space for me to make play so that I could then throw the ball back to them. Even though I didn't have a word for it, I started doing it. Later, I learned also on the WISE group LARPers BFF that it had a name. It's called Play to Lift. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I think that it also requires stepping back from the immersion, so that you're not so fully immersed in your character that you don't see what's happening around. And sometimes it also means doing something against your character. I will give you another example in a second. Steering. So steering is a very curious phenomenon, because it means getting the plot where you want it, or getting the situation where you want it. And steering can be understood as something detrimental to play, something done out of selfishness. If you want to win something, you will steer the play so that you get it. In this understanding, for the narrative approach to work, I think that steering means steering for the most drama, for the most playability. So you as a player also take a step aside from your character. You are like this ghost hovering over this material, corporeal form, and you see which way to push it to create maximum play. This is the steering. Pre-planning scenes. Another controversial one. Not everyone will agree, and not every LARP is conducive to this one. but sometimes you have the possibility to agree with your co-players that it would be really cool to have a certain scene. It can be through the calibration immediately before the scene, going, hey, so how about we have this argument now? Or even before the game, approaching someone and saying, hey, so I know we are playing siblings, but would it be cool to have this specific scene at some point in the LARP? I know that there are LARPers who are pantsers and who just like to go, you know, Leroy Jenkins into the game and let's see what happens. And there are also those LARPers who will pre-plan everything just to know that they will get the best story possible. No approach is wrong, no approach is foolproof, but I think that there is a benefit to pre-planning things. Even if not full scenes, that at least some gateways to play, so that you know that, okay, this is the LARPer I can approach if I'm stuck, or if I want to build more drama, or anything. Just talk to people before the game, or know that you can approach someone in the game. The worst thing that can happen is they will say no. The curious case of self-typecast players. This is something that was also very interesting to me when I met this. Do you know LARPers who always play the same type of character? They're always, it's the same one. It's basically like you cast Chuck Norris and they're always Chuck Norris. No other character. Chuck Norris is always Chuck Norris. This is your character. They're always typecast and they are very happy with it, and they will seek out the same type of role over and over and over again, either because they feel comfortable with it, within it, or because it's easier for them to create play this way. So if somebody knows that they are playing an amazing villain and they will always be cast as a villain, that's not a bad thing. I mean, it may be a bad thing if it's the same LARP and nobody else gets to play that, but this is a marginal situation. If we are talking about someone who constantly aims for the same roles for the sake of creating play for others, that's actually great. So they will be sacrificing a little bit of their experience because they will be limiting themselves in order to create a better story, better relations. And this is also something that I had to learn from other players when I saw this in action, and I was wondering what the hell is happening. And then it just clicked, and I was really impressed how well they were doing, like half NPCing and still having a lot of fun. So as an organizer, how do we contribute to this approach? There are millions of techniques. I only picked a couple. We fill the game with well-paced action or dramatic tension while leaving some breathing space so that people can actually do things on their own. This means that players will have to communicate somehow, because you will have people who are bored. You will have people who are wandering around and not sure what they are going to do. And so automatically, other people will reach out to them. And sometimes when you're bored, you will step out of character, you will be immediately drawn out of immersion, and you will be wondering, okay, what can I do to make this experience better? And I think that this is something that can be implemented on the organizer side, to leave room for people to get bored. So fill it with action, get people the opportunity to play their character, and leave some space for them to experience boredom. Add secret agents NPCs and make them responsible for managing the pace of the game or facilitating people's personal experiences. NPCs are a great tool that is very well used at games, especially when we need to push certain plots forward, but very rarely used to drive people to be more generous in play. I've seen it at only a couple of LARPs. One of those LARPs is Conscience, which does it really, really well, because they are planting NPCs among the players, and the players don't know. So the goal of those NPCs, and they are trained for it, and it's really, really clever, is to encourage other players to create scenes for one another. So they are not the spark that lights the dynamite. They just point to the dynamite and hand them the lighter. And it's great, because this is a very organic way of creating play. And if one person just ignores the dynamite, they can go to another or to another until somebody does it and creates play for others. So this use of NPCs is a fantastic idea, and I am definitely going to be using them in my games as well. Okay, so should we kill immersion? I would say yes. Not fully, like shoot it in the knee maybe. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is immersion has hurt me. 100% immersion has hurt me. It has hurt other people that played with me. Maybe it's because I was inexperienced, but I can't name a single game, and I've played plenty of them, of various genres, and I can't name a single one where I was fully immersed and I can say that I'm happy with myself as a player. I'm happy with my character, as in looking from the outside with like cool eye. Yeah, they had a great story. They had an amazing story. Those were some of the best experiences that I've had. But I feel so bad about not being generous enough, about not stepping outside to calibrate certain things, about wasting some opportunities for great storytelling and great play. And if I could go back, I would have taken some of the immersion away while leaving the rest, and I would have given it back to the other players. Because I know now that they would have done the same for me, but I didn't leave them any space. So, thank you, that's my conclusion, but I'm very happy to hear your thoughts about this. I hope I didn't completely destroy your belief in me as a LARPer by presenting this shocking revelation that I am not a huge fan of fully immersing yourself in the character. So, what do you think? No, that's the... anyone wants the cone of truth?
I mean, well, what can I say? For many people, I guess, the immersion is this holy grail, but I think it's also depend on the game itself, because some of them maybe are more oriented into the story, and some of them, especially if it's a shorter game, it's easier to be fully immersed, for example, because it is less exhausting. And it also, I think, depends on the character, because, I mean, both player, personality of the player and the character in the game, because I think it's much easier and healthier to just be immersed in the, let's say, character which quite resonate with you, and also if it's not terribly bad, I mean not bad in the terms of narrative, but a personality, because if you are maybe too immersed in an evil character, for example, a serial killer or the super villain, etc., it might not be very helpful for you, so maybe it's better to act it and have a fun with doing scenes and following the plot. But if you are too immersed, or also in terms of disturbed character with a lot of problems, I mean, it could be interesting, but you need to think up this before starting, because it could be a sort of pain also for a player, I mean for your, let's say, mental health sometimes, if you go too deep.
I will just quickly answer if I can. I actually have an anecdote about this specific case, about the villain. So at some point, after realizing what Play to Lift was, I was given the role of a villain to play, and it was a great character. It was written so thoughtfully and so multidimensionally that it was very easy to kind of see where they were coming from. So not fully merge with their motivations, but at least understand them. And I did allow myself to immerse to a degree, And this character was built in such a way that I was hoping in-game for her to be taken down by the heroes. To have a complete, hero moment for the antagonist, for the protagonist actually, so that she would lose hopelessly, and then the players surprised me, and they went for a redemption arc. So everything that was in my head had to be redefined. So I had to take another step back, get out of this character, and think, okay, they want to save this horrible, horrible person. What the hell do I do? And it was a really tricky decision, because it was so unlike this character. This character was not written to be redeemable. But the players really wanted it to be redeemable. So I basically trashed the whole thing, what my character would do, because the character would just laugh in their face and go do the evil thing, and they would have to take her down. And I went for the redemption, because that made for a better story, and because I already knew what this whole play to lift thing was. And they completely played me to lift. They played me as this really formidable antagonist, and I thought that they were doing it to have this hero moment, while in fact they were trying to do the opposite. So sometimes, taking this step away from the character is very, very helpful for you to also see the perspective of, okay, what are the other players trying to do? And how can I do something to aid that? So yeah, thank you for bringing up the villains, because they're important.
I have a stupid pun that when you play to lift, your narrative muscles grow. And also, I want to add, this is something about losing. So for me, what helps me to get into this director position is to make bad decisions, but on purpose. Especially when I'm bored, sometimes I just think that, okay, I will tell all my story and all secrets to the first person that comes through this door. And it always led me to some interesting things. But also, as a game master, I think you should allow losing to be interesting to your players, because if losing is not fun, it's very sad, it's very, we all know that. And I think as a game master, I think to help players play to lift, we should create a world or an event where losing is also fun, and it also takes you on some interesting narrative, and you do not feel like you lost.
I think a lot of here revolves around the efficiency trap, because if we think what kind of immersion would be best, how much immersion would say, yeah, all of it. But it's not the case. Because quality of immersion, do we need that much immersion? Do we need immersion all the time? Do you need to eat all the time? Or do you have few meals a day? Which one will be better? We often emphasize more, not the quality and not the moment. I learned this about when I was doing the special effects work. It's easy trap, put more smoke, put more lights, put more explosives. And then you have some small work where you just right, just small amount, less flashy, but toned down, and it works better. It's if we only value how much immersion we have, not the quality, it just that's a trap. That's plain trap that you see only after you do it a few times. And also, we have peaks in narrative, and we also could have the peaks in the immersion. The moments are better and more memorable than being immersed all the time.
I absolutely love this point, and I also admire anyone who can kind of use this little, okay, now I'm going to be immersed more, now I'm going to be immersed less, although it's probably more natural. And then there's also the flip side of that. Romantic relations in LARPs, which can be really difficult when you immerse yourself fully, and then you get bleed after the game. And then suddenly you have feelings for another player instead of their character. And this is also something that is an argument against full immersion, but it's a more complicated one because it's much more difficult to control that kind of thing. And I've unfortunately had some players experience this kind of thing at some of the games that I ran. I'm not sure yet how to counteract that. I think that this is on the player mostly, and maybe on the workshops, but I haven't really gotten to that point yet. But this is something that scares me a lot, this allowing yourself to get fully immersed in a relation that is so dangerous to your real life persona. Kind of.
Thank you. So, okay. Just give me a second. So yeah, I'm also one of those people who always think that more immersion is better and also always try to be an immersive player. I think that the biggest problem here is that, well, first we all are different people, so not everything works for everyone. But the second is that we actually may mean several different things when we say immersion. Basically, so I personally have observed at least 3 different things that all are called immersion. So one of them is like a simulationist approach of being inside the game all the time. So it's just a technicality that you don't interact with the game world outside of the character. It's not a mental thing, it's more of an approach thing. So you don't need to feel as a character to just act as a character all the time, and it's still sort of immersion. The second thing is this emotional style that leads to bleed, both in a good and a bad way. And the third way, for me personally, is immersion as a tool. I personally can't play except in Stanislavski's way. Like, I need to feel the character to play the character the others would believe in, and it still, so in an ideal case, it should still allow for a director's position. So you should be able, at the same time, to be inside the character and feel the emotions of the character so that you are acting absolutely believable and still have a small voice at the back that controls you and says that now you should rein this a bit down because you are hurting other players, now you should go away from here to allow others to play. And it shouldn't interrupt the immersion, because immersion here is a tool to create a better game and not the end game itself. So something like that. And yeah, so I've been telling about our games in the previous part, so an hour ago. So we tried to sort of use this stuff inside the game, and we had to work out several rules and techniques. And yes, one of them was that that we are not giving the antagonist roles to the players. So all antagonism is from the NPCs, and the players are basically good people. Because if everyone is trying to be immersed, and you put them on the different sides, you are going to get conflicts that bleed very strongly. So basically, we did a very immersive game, and we positioned several teams of players against the NPC threat, for example. So nobody from the players was playing the dark side, basically. That way we allowed, so there were interplayer conflicts, but they didn't bleed exactly into my character would kill your character because I'm evil, and I did that because I was the best. Well, I'm rambling. I'll try to build myself. Just give me a second. And yeah, so I'm quoting a bit. And another thing about immersion, that yes, it very often leads to this very rich internal world that doesn't affect the game. So if a person is immersed and sits in the corner, this person doesn't play the game actually. So there should be techniques to bring the immersion actually into the world and share it. And there should be techniques and ways in the game to allow sharing of emotions. Like if it's a camp that's playing together, they should have a sort of ritual where every person is sharing the emotions of their character and sort of passing them around and have a place to speak about that. And in this way, you are using immersion to push the game forward because it creates stuff that is discussed inside the game. So if someone is sad, he isn't just sitting in the corner being sad, he should come out and tell everybody else why he's sad, and they are trying to work with that. So if you get my meaning.
So I would like to say from the point of safety, psychological safety, there are two solutions I know. One is building NPC who see if anybody is too immersed or is bleeding and somehow control it, and it should be person, maybe professional, some kind of professional in psychology to at the right time to pick up this person and try not to save it from damage to the person, not to the player, not to the character. And another solution is some kind of, I don't know the name of it in English. After the game, everybody, a cycle after the game, when everybody talk about himself, his character, and the role. The role, yes.
Debrief, but also the rolling, because in some circles two different things apparently.
I don't know how popular it is.
I think it depends on the LARP culture and on the, the game itself. But sometimes the rolling and the debriefing are two different things, and then there's also feedback. So they have like 3 different cycles, I think. But I like the idea of having some answer, some in-game answer to somebody sitting in a corner and crying because they got too immersed, for instance. Some games are using community as the solution, meaning that every character is part of a group. And at the pre-game workshops and also at the just pre-writing stage, the characters are bound together by either familial ties or some other group ties that make them kind of reliant on the group, or at least make them feel like they belong somewhere. So that every time somebody's sitting in a corner crying, their members of the group can go and ask, hey, what's going on? Or come have a beer with us and tell us what's going on. So it's not just a chance that a generous player will stop and ask, hey, what's going on? Do you want to tell me your tragic backstory? But there are actually people who have this care written into their characters. Oh yeah, I do give a shit about your backstory. Come, let's have a beer and talk about it. So this is, I like this because it's diegetic, and also it doesn't involve a safety person at this stage yet. Unless this person just says no, and then there are also the meta techniques of like checking, are you okay? Which is a symbol used very often in international games. When you want to off-game make sure that a person is okay, you just make this gesture and then they reply yes, no, or like, oh, I'm not sure. And then you know if this is them crying in-game, and you can go about their business or roleplay, or not. And I like that a lot as well. Because you never know if somebody got immersed too deeply or if they are actually not fine. Any other thoughts?